Welcome back to State of the Union. You just heard from the highest-ranking Republican on Capitol Hill on January 6th. Now let's hear from the leading Democrat that day. Here with me now is Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. Thank you so much for being here. It's nice to see you in person. I want to play something that you said just days after the January 6th attack.
Weigh a ton. And if you're Donald Trump talking to these people, they believe it. And they used his words to come here. The crime, in some cases, was murder. Yeah. And this president is an accessory to that crime because he instigated that insurrection that caused those deaths and this destruction.
Do you still believe, as you did then, that Donald Trump committed a crime?
First, let me thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Congratulations to you on your 30 years. It seems impossible, but nonetheless, how wonderful. The president is not above the law. I'm afraid what I heard the vice president say earlier, as much as I admire him, and he was a hero that day, Mike Pence was. The president is not above the law. We saw what happened. It was free. It was very clear. It's heartbreaking because my motto for all these things, and the flag was still there. Being from Baltimore, a national anthem written there, and the flag was still there. We always have to make sure that it's about the rule of law and about freedom of speech and all of that. And he has, I mean, the courts will act. He has innocent until proven guilty.
But what does justice look like to you?
Well, justice has to be something that relates to the facts and the law. What are the facts? What is the law? Now make the case. And I've been through this so many times in the Congress on ethics cases and the rest of that. Nothing about rumor, nothing about reputation, nothing about hearsay, the facts and the law.
In a private call, the now Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, told the former president that he supported the idea of expunging Trump's two impeachments, but apparently he didn't commit to bringing it to the floor for a vote. You oversaw both of those impeachment proceedings. What's your reaction to this notion?
Well, the president was impeached because we had no choice. He had undermined our national security, jeopardized our well-being of our country. I was very careful about bringing any impeachment forward. But when the president made that phone call in terms of Ukraine, there was no choice. We had no choice. He must be impeached. Kevin is, playing politics. It's not even clear if he constitutionally can expunge those things. If he wants to put his members on the spot, his members in difficult races on the spot, that's a decision he has to make. But this is not responsible. This is not about the flag still being there. This is about being afraid. As I've said before, Donald Trump is the puppeteer. And what does he do all the time but shine the light on the strings? These people look pathetic.
I want to ask about the economy. Inflation, it looks good when you look at the numbers. Inflation is down to just 3%. The labor market is steadily adding jobs. Wages are up. Consumer sentiment is the highest since September of 2021. Yeah. So there's a lot for President Biden to tout. So the question is about why Americans don't seem to be giving him the credit. A Quinnipiac poll this week found nearly 6 in 10 Americans still disapprove of his handling of the economy. Why is that, and what does he have to do to turn that around?
Well, a lot of it's about messaging, of course. I'm so proud of this president. In the 2 years that we were in the majority working with him, he broke all records on the level with a Lyndon Johnson or a Franklin Roosevelt in terms of the caliber of legislation that he passed for the good of the people, lowering prescription drugs, again, cutting in half, as you indicate, cutting in half unemployment.
So why isn't the American public giving him credit for
almost 14 million jobs? There has to be messaged. It is a legitimate question. I ask myself all the time, too. This president did such a remarkable job. He is a person of such knowledge, such vision for the country, such knowledge of the issues, such strategic thinking and such a legislator, and on top of it all, a person who connects with the American people. He just has to get out there. It's a busy job being president. I can say that as being speaker. You're doing your work, but he's just going to have to make sure the American people know at that kitchen table what this means to them in terms of jobs and pay, reducing inflation, as you indicated, lowest in the whole Western world.
You have seen that the number of strikes, unions striking, not only do we see striking in Hollywood, the writers and the actors, just generally, more than 650,000 Americans could be on strike this summer. UPS workers could go on strike next month. The United Auto Workers could do the same in September. You and President Biden are strong allies of the unions. Could these strikes jeopardize the fragile economic recovery?
Well, I'm hoping that the writers' strike and the actors' strike will find a path, because
pretty far apart.
Well, they're far apart, but the fact is that these people have to be paid for their creativity. And again, we like the creativity on the management side as well. They have to come together. In terms of UPS, I'm close to UPS. For 100 years, they've been a union shop. And so I respect that. And I also want to make sure that everybody understands what is happening.
Are you worried that all of this could hurt the recovery?
I'm hoping that we don't have a UPS strike.
Okay.
I'm not as familiar with the United Auto Workers strike, but I am familiar with the UPS strike, and I think that that's within range not to be a strike, and I would hope so, because people work very hard, and some of the terms are difference between temporary workers and former work. There's no use going into all of it, but the fact is there has to be a path so that there isn't a strike, respect for workers, and I'm hopeful that that will be the case.
This past week, 2 IRS whistleblowers, career investigators, testified under oath that the Justice Department slow-walked the investigation into President Biden's son, Hunter, and ignored recommendations to file more serious felony charges. Are you confident the politics did not play a role here?
Well, it was, since you referenced the hearing, what a ridiculous clown show, again, on the part of the Republicans. Here was a purpose that you described. What did they do? Bring in Joe Kennedy talking about censorship, that he's being censored as he's talking to the world in a congressional hearing, and showing pictures that had nothing to do with the essence of it.
I think you mentioned Robert F. Kennedy, but on the essence of it.
I'm sorry, just
it's okay.
Robert
there are a lot of Kennedys. Do you feel confident no politics played at DOJ?
The U.S. attorney was a Trump appointee, Now, I have respect for whistleblowers, but the fact is that from the basis of that hearing, they didn't even have a fair shot at what they came to say in light of the clown show that was going on with pictures and Robert Kennedy with his ridiculous presentation. No, I'm not confident about what the whistleblower said. The U.S. attorney was a Trump attorney. This is their opinion. It was not the opinion of the others there.
On Friday, Alabama's Republican governor defied a court order, one that was upheld by the Supreme Court, to redraw the state's congressional map and add a second majority black district. What's your reaction to that?
It's ridiculous. That is so completely, totally ridiculous. I have a great deal of respect for Eric Holder, who's the head of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. He's not a partisan. He's just saying, let's have an objective redistricting. Terry Sewell, our member of Congress from the area, in the district they drew earlier in the week, they took her out of Selma. They took her out of Montgomery. She's an iconic figure there. And, of course, John Lewis, Martin Luther King Jr., and took her out of that. So something is wrong with that picture. And it's larger. You see the racism that is happening in our country. They had an article in the paper this morning about a black man who was elected mayor of a southern town, and the whites said, you can't serve. So it's getting to be pretty blatant. So maybe they intend to take this back up to the Supreme Court, but they cannot. It cannot. And that's why we have to pass the Voting Rights Act. When I was not even Speaker, I was a leader, we wrote it in our office with the Republicans, bipartisan way, the Voting Rights Act. We frisked the senator, leader in the Senate, and I walked down the steps. In the House, we had 400 and something votes.
Yeah, it was a big bipartisan vote.
Unanimous in the Senate. What has happened to the Republican Party that they've taken it to this?
Before I let you go, are you going to run for re-election?
I'm not making any political plans here today, but I'm enjoying my service with the members. Our new members are wonderful. Our leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, Catherine Clark.
What's your timeline? When will you decide?
We'll see. We'll see. But anyway, it's lovely to see you.
Thank you for coming in.
We must make sure our flag is still there. All of our values as a country are at stake because of what Donald Trump has put forth. He's not above the law.
Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, thank you.
My pleasure.